Welcome back to the Convo Couch. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Pasta Jardula.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Jonny Sue is still spinning on those ones and twos. We have a great show for you today. I hope you had a great Wahalote Day, fam. I know you worked. I worked. Wahalote. Wahalote is L.A. for turkey.
I had no idea.
Well, how do you say it in Spanish, turkey?
It's pavo.
What?
Pavo.
Pavo. Okay. I think it's like an L.A. slang.
I think it's probably Mexican, not L.A.
Well, yeah, probably.
There's a difference between like L.A. and like Mexican.
Got it. But, only certain people know Wahalote. It's funny, when I would do Wahalote, I'd say it. Some people from the North Triangle area, whether it be Honduras or Salvador or Ecuador or any of those areas, like, what the hell is Wahalote? So I guess it is just kind of like for this area. So thank you very much all for everybody who joined on the Facebook. We have Amber, Lee, Gregorio, Scott Dakota, Tony Humanic, Gilbert Flores just joined on in. And also, one second, let me just go right here. We have Anthony Reyes, Choctaw Warrior, who's on the MCSC network, Natalie Chavez. How you guys all doing I
blocked him on the Convo Couch.
Exactly. So he's over on the MCSC network. Jim Lockett, Toby Dubs, Saul Construct. Behave today. We won't get you busted over there. You know who you are. Ian Ferguson. How you doing, Allison Murphy? Thank you all for joining on, and we have a great show for you. We missed you. The holidays were upon us. Fam.
Yes.
One of your favorites?
So if you guys remember Peter Daou, who got popularized a lot by Peter Douche, thanks to Pat the Burner, has now made it impossible to make fun of him because he's been, for the last, several months of this year, he has been kind of on our side. He started, calling out the Democratic establishment. He started calling out Hillary Clinton and just even talking about how the Democratic Party really needs to come together and see that Bernie Sanders is the guy to beat Donald Trump, and he's the only guy offering actual change from capitalism to democratic socialism. And this is really surprising because all of us know that in 2016, Peter Daou was one of the harshest critics of not only Bernie Sanders, but of the majority of his supporters.
Yeah.
To the point where he would block people. He got into it with David Serrata, Brianne Joy Gray, obviously Pat the Burner, and a bunch of the Twitter people. And so now he's actually going in for Bernie. He's actually organizing with the Bernie campaign. And the question I want to pose here is, first, let's look a little bit at this article, because this is coming out because he went on an interview show with for Hear the Burn, which is Brianne Joy Gray's little podcast for Bernie Sanders, and so she interviewed him and Bernie Sanders both.
I just want to say something on talk about what you're talking about too. He wasn't just really bad to all the people within the establishment. He was really harsh to the supporters of Bernie Sanders.
That's what I mean.
He attacked them directly, the people. Of course you have this inner fighting when it comes when you're a Democrat supporting the Hillary Clinton machine. You're going to fight and, draw off against these people. But to the people itself, it was really, really hard. The supporters. Toxic. I used to try to play a game when I used to have to come home from Santa Monica. It's about a 45-minute drive. I would try to get through his podcast without throwing something and getting that mad. That's how upsetting Peter Daou made me feel. So go ahead with Brianna Joy Gray stuff.
So nothing. She interviewed him, and he went on to explain exactly how he was Hillary Clinton's most ardent supporter in 2016, and then how he became, kind of just realized, hey, the Democratic Party is going in the wrong direction. Now, from what I understand, he's also no longer getting paid by the same people that he was getting paid in 2016. That obviously is also going to lead to a change of heart. And one thing I do want to note that he said was, he said, I was a vocal Hillary Clinton supporter, and now I moved to a position where I think the Democratic Party establishment needs to change. And he said, Bernie Sanders is a sole candidate advocating for systemic change, democratic socialism, really questioning the capitalist system, questioning the entire establishment. Peter Daou had also worked for John Kerry and had actually been employed by Hillary Clinton. He didn't just like go on Twitter. He was actually employed by Hillary Clinton. And at the end of this article, he mentions one last thing, and he says, I have the right to change my mind. And then he also says, to simply put in perspective, in 2016, he says his advice for the Democrats in this primary who want to avoid going down that path, his path was focus on the movement, not necessarily the individual candidate. That is sound advice, but what I want to get to is this genuine? Is his change of heart something that's possible? Because the article goes on to point out that, you know, several other Clinton staffers have changed their mind on Bernie Sanders and have kind of like come around to see, okay, like this is, you know, this is where the party's going.
Yeah.
Now, is that change of heart because they genuinely believe it? Or is it because they see the writing on the wall? Like they see, of course, what is more popular now. And also, is his change of heart, like, is it possible for people to change their mind that much? And, you know, is there money involved? What exactly is going on here? Because allow us to be distrusting. Because, I mean, this guy was like toxic to us. Yeah. And so like for him to change his mind out of nowhere, and it's not out of nowhere. It's been kind of a process. But I just, you know, I am going to be a little suspect. I do think it's good that we are changing some people's minds. I think that is speaking to what Bernie Sanders' movement is doing. Yeah. But also, I tend to be distrusting because Faiz here is mentioned. Faiz is one of the leaders in the Bernie Sanders campaign staff. And he started talking about how, you know, some Sanders supporters were turned off, or some Clinton supporters were turned off because of the vitriol of some Sanders supporters. But it's like, I don't know. I don't think you should go that route. I think like it's been a few of the Sanders supporters that were mean and vitriolic, but the majority of them were nowhere near to what they were treated as. And so to kind of say that, oh, like Sanders supporters, if you guys were nicer, we could turn more people. I just don't buy that. I'm just not buying
let's talk about this for a second. Let's digress to Peter Daou for a second, because it wasn't a change of heart because of his conscience. It was a change of heart because of his pocket. Like you said, he was getting paid before, and in the capitalist system, you need to get money. You need to get paid. It kind of reminds me of the same girl from Cambridge Analytica when she said, why did you do this? She had a house. Her mom was about to be foreclosed on. She needed the money. He's been cut loose. He's not working for the Democrat elites anymore. So he needs to pivot and make money. So a lot of people are going to do those things when it comes to making money. And so it could be an opening, you know what I'm saying? I'm never going to really take him on 100% after the things he said. No matter what, once you go past a point of no return, it's a point of no return, fam. But let's not be honest. This guy's got to make money. He's used to a certain lifestyle, certain paycheck. So he's probably maybe kind of moving or morphing into that area where he can make a buck or two. I mean, he's always going to be suspect. No.
Yeah, I tend to agree with like it's also like a money thing, Mike. I'm not gonna say if it's genuine or not. It seems genuine, but what I'm saying is I just feel like there's a lot of co-option going on in this campaign. Like there's a lot of in general in this movement where people are realizing what's popular and what gets them, you know, more notoriety and more likes and etc. And Bernie Sanders is that guy. Like a lot of the commentators on YouTube have made it their focal point to pretty much just praise Bernie all the time and become sycophants of his because that's what gets him the most views. I mean, I could mention all the names, the Humanist Report, Michael Brooks, like Daou, like all of them. Like I just like this is all. There's no like actual like criticism, no actual like nuanced discussions on policy. It's more like let's just praise how this is going. Why? Because this is what gets them the most views. It's not even news. It's not any sort of like legislative discussion. It's more of like this is what gets us the likes. And I feel like that is happening in general within the Bernie campaign in a way with the Bernie movement where people are realizing, holy crap, this is where the party's going. Yeah. This is a movement. We have to get on it. We have to, we have to be the ones to get in front of it. In a way, that is how the establishment keeps a hold of and kind of seeps into our grassroots movement. So we do have to be suspect and very careful to who we let in. And it's not, being like unwanting of people or thinking people can't change their minds. They totally can. But the reason you change your mind is also very important.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anybody who does this here too as well, they always got to kind of be conscious of what gets them hits or whatnot. You know, I look at our videos and I was like, oh my God, you know, a lot of the Tulsi videos get a lot of play. A lot of the Bernie videos get a lot of play. So sometimes I'm always kind of like, well, what's going on over there? You know, and there's got to be that happy balance and stuff. I mean, God only knows we're three people talking here, sitting here, who are doing this not for the money. We're doing it for the love of the game because we want to make a difference in this world. We want to, you know, provide independent media that's so desperately needed. We try to find ways to make amends and whatnot, and to do this full time. But at the same time, I think they're always going to look and see what gets them hit, what always can bring them money. Right. There has to be. I mean, that's the system we live in, and it kind of sucks that we do live in that system. So it is something we have to be conscious about the whole time. But when it comes to Peter Daou, I am, no matter what, because what he said in the past, I'm sleeping with one eye open, if that makes any sense. Right. No, and I agree with you, and I mean, I think, you know, like I said, people can change their minds, and we can welcome him they can evolve.
with caution. Yeah, exactly. And I do agree with you that the money has a lot to do with it. I mean, I think, you know, that's the bottom line. And it's normal it's normal to have to like make, you know, ends meet to try to like live off something, right? But I do fear that because of the growing popularity, it's like a win-lose situation, right? You're winning because people are adopting Bernie's ideas. People are trying to be Bernie. There's Elizabeth Warren trying to be Bernie. There's, you know, Bernie kind of like getting endorsed by these popular celebrities. There's all of this happening. With that comes also inauthentic support, whereby you're going to see, if you see a little bit of cracking in the campaign, or if you see a little bit of like of the establishment saying, oh no, Bernie's not it, we're going to nominate somebody else, you're going to see those people be the first to go.
Yeah.
And that's something everybody should prepare themselves for, because that's what happened last time. That's what happens time and time again.
Absolutely.
The people whose lives depend on this movement, the people not employed by the campaign, the people who are driving those votes for Bernie Sanders, who are knocking on doors for free, who are putting half of their time or more into this campaign as volunteers, and are building also coalitions of movements and organizing here outside of Bernie, because they know this isn't about Bernie Sanders. They know this is a movement, and this is bigger than any one individual candidate. And that needs to be understood, because I think a lot of people don't understand that this isn't about Bernie Sanders. This isn't about one person. This is about everybody understanding they are part of a greater whole and doing the work that needs to be done, even if he gets in there to be president. Because as Pasta said, the moment he gets in there, he can push for Medicare for all, but they're not necessarily going to pass it. It's going to take everybody else to demand that happens. And the same thing with any sort of other decision he can make that is going to involve Congress. And so the bottom line here is, this is not a paycheck for a lot of us. This is our lives at stake. And when you have a paycheck, when you depend on a paycheck, and you don't necessarily believe that what you're fighting for is bigger than yourself, then the moment that's over, you're going to move on to a different candidate, and then a different candidate, and then a different, and it doesn't matter. But for us, this is our livelihood. And so that's the difference between, and that's why we're also suspect of such a change. And I welcome it, and I'm glad I see it, and I like to see it, love to see it.
Yeah.
But
let's be honest too. I mean, you know, we have to hold Bernie accountable for the things we can get him better on. And you know, absolutely. I'm with Fiorella when we say we can move him left on certain things. I believe he is listening. Some people who have left Bernie from the last time when he supported Hillary Clinton, a lot of those Greens that we talked about that are never coming back, they'll never think that Bernie can be moved. I'm still of the camp that believe that Bernie can be moved on certain issues. I hope to God that if he does win this primary, he immediately fires Fayez and all these other guys from the Center for American Progress, gets a new person, gets on that Tulsi train when it comes to foreign policy, because it's necessary. But once again, it is the movement itself. And like you said, Bernie gets in. Single payer is not just becoming into law. It's a long work from there, and he's going to count on us to get on the streets and get it moving. Speaking about paychecks, those of you who help us with our Patreon, thank you so much. We're close to 90 Patreons, and that is so awesome. And anything you can do to lend a buck or two to help on out.
You guys
are
awesome.
Fun stuff up there. Yes, you are. And Tony watches closely also with the Super Chat contribution. Thank you, Tony. And as it is always appreciated on the couch, that's what he wanted. And he says, please don't hit him, Fee. laughing my ass off. Talking about Congress, fam, as we digress into the next situation, we have had this thing when we go out with our friends, around the household. We talk about Hong Kong and China a lot, and too. And I think I want to make a point right out the gate when I say this is that I'm not going around saying that China has the way, that they're the number one beacon of light government, authoritarian ways or whatnot. It's funny. There's a spider crawling on top of the computer. We talked about it on top of the camera. It's so funny, guys. You guys can't see it, but Spider-Man is watching. And listen, thank you to the spider for the super chat contribution. But I talk about China often because I say that I don't want us to manufacture consent. You know, we've been taught in school, we've been given this kind of information that China is this crazy authoritarian government, that it's so evil, that it's just won't let people talk. We can't have the CONVO couch. It's gone, John. You don't have the CONVO couch in China. It'll never happen, whatnot. But we also talk about, and I talk about often, the way China has made big, big steps to help poverty, to pull people out of poverty. In fact, they got this new Belt and Road Initiative that is coming on that will really take a ton more people out of poverty, provide access for food, for resources, for gas, for electricity, for energy, for medical aid. To build the whole project is going to just really lift a lot of people out of poverty. But I don't want us manufacturing consent and pointing the finger at China and Hong Kong for us to go and put aircraft carriers in the South China Sea by depicting that Hong Kong is getting invaded by China. It's just not the case right now. It is a sticky situation. Hong Kong has been given over to China, but it's a slow process, and there's a two-system government. In other words, China's going to run their system their way, and Hong Kong is allowed to stay within their preliminary system, their parliamentary system, and do what they got to do. They had this law come out saying that they were going to lift this extradition law. What had happened was between Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Beijing, there's no extradition laws. Somebody can commit a crime in China, go to Hong Kong, and not be accounted for. They can't go and extradite him. Somebody can commit a crime in Hong Kong, go to Taiwan, and not be accounted for. They can't go and extradite him. So they put this law up, and all shit broke loose. We've been reporting on this show, as many other shows, about the way the NED has been funding this things left and right. Now, the other day, they had the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act of 2019. You can see right over here, we have the government bill from the House. Now, we don't have the votes because it was a voice vote, so there's nothing logged down. But let's go to the co-sponsors right there, Johnny. When you hit the co-sponsors, let's take a look at who co-sponsored this bill and why I am so upset. You can see right here. Scott Perry, of course. You got Brian Fitzpatrick. You got Ted Yoho. We'll go back to him a little bit later because Ted Yoho's American. But then you have people like Ayanna Pressley, who signed on to this bill. So disappointing. Ro Khanna, who signed on to this bill. As expected, fam, Harley Rauda co-signed onto this bill. You know, Harley, your guy. Peter King, all the way down. It was kind of upsetting. And now if you go to the Senate, and you go to the Senate bill, once again, just paying attention to simply who's co-sponsoring this bill. And this vote was just the other day. Where's the co-sponsors? Oh, I can't. I'm on the wrong thing. But anyways, you can see the co-sponsors on there. Johnny, let me see if I can't even get to it. Let me see if I can get to it. Sorry. But there's the co-sponsors on there. There's Elizabeth Warren. There is Kamala Harris. There is Cory Booker. All the ones we suspected that will jump on this thing immediately and act like they're fighting for
Bernie
human
Sanders
rights.
there?
Bernie Sanders is not a co-sponsor. Tulsi Gabbard is not a co-sponsor.
Wow.
Everybody else, though.
Jeez. I am
Klobuchar
so surprised that the two most progressive candidates
have not co-signed on to this bill. However, I heard it was a unanimous decision within the House.
Yeah.
When they voted voice-wise, I was very, very upset by it. And of course, as you can see, Donald J. Trump has now signed this into law.
Wow.
So now you have the House, the Senate, whatnot. Now you can say, okay, well, what is this? What are we protecting about? And I just want to show you real quick because guys like Ben Norton, I've been so on this. A guy named Ajit Singh, who writes for the Gray Stone, been so on this.
Gray Zone, yeah.
The Gray Zone. Let's take a look at Ben Norton's Twitter real quick, because he put up a little post, and I've been saying about this, like, these people who are funded for the riots now, at one point, fam, there were a lot of people out in the beginning. They were protesting against the ways in Hong Kong, the poorness, the austerity measures, and somehow it got hijacked. And then the NED and these anti-Beijing people all came in. So this is right here. Show this Twitter, this video right here. There's been a lot of things right here. You can see the video. These are some of the brutal, violent, moderate rebels. Using the term moderate rebels because we heard it before in Hong Kong that the U.S. government, the corporate media, and the neoliberal human rights industry wholeheartedly are supporting. So now there's been a lot of this, and you can watch this. A lot of people would go to the streets, like the citizens of Hong Kong, and they would clean up the roads that the protesters have been blocking and whatnot. So here comes a person trying to clean up the roads, and watch what a protester does to him. Word of caution, violence.
今日見到有人喺度清路障喎，竟然嗱，今日見到啦，有一啲市民啦喺度清路障嘅，咁啊會唔會引起一啲事嘅發生咧？咁啊唔知㗎，係咪嗱？
So you can see right here, he's just cleaning up the stuff in the streets. We saw this the other day. This is a video that made me cry. There was about 25, 30 people in the streets. You can see he's just trying to get stuff out of the streets so the average, everyday person, can get to work. This strike has been affecting the poor people of this country. So the protesters don't like him, and it was narrated on the camera that they started talking shit. So here he starts clearing the major part of the rubble that's going to let people get through. He's got a stick to protect himself, so he puts his phone out so he can cover stuff, and boom. If you guys didn't hear that, could they hear that? There was that metal pipe across the face smacking him.
Jesus.
Look at the blood flowing. These are the supporters we're protesting. And I want to make a point of this because within the new bill, within this new democracy bill that was signed into place, and we're going to go to, as soon as we're done here, we're going to go to the Ajit Singh article that he wrote from the Gray Zone, which was amazing. And it has Nancy Pelosi there. And it says, Hong Kong's opposition to Washington.
Hong Kong's
opposition unites with Washington hardliners to preserve U.S.'s own political and economic interest. This was a great written article, and it says, while claiming to fight for self-determination, Hong Kong oppositions and leaders are collaborating with regime change neoconservatives in Washington to preserve the U.S.'s own political and economic interest. A new D.C. lobbying front has become their base of operations. And I want to read a couple of the first paragraphs real quick because it gets really, really cool here. The U.S. state anonymously passed the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act on November 19th without any opposition, despite loudly proclaiming to protect human rights and democracy. A closer look at the legislation reveals that the imperial agenda underlying Washington's action in Hong Kong. And I love his second sentence right here. It says, behind its humanitarian cloak. And that's what it is, fan. We do this all the time.
Right.
We act like we're for human rights. We act like we're for peace. We act like we're for democracy. We want more democracy. And yet, we're going in there to really give ourselves an economic advantage. This is about protecting oligarchs and corporations within Hong Kong. This is about protecting the trade rights. We are meddling in their business no matter what. And here's the thing, fam. If China is authoritarian AF, if they're bad, that's fine. Okay? But we're not there really to stand up against that. We're there for our own economic needs. The military-industrial complex is pushing to put aircraft carriers in the South China Sea. And it's disgusting, and I hate to say I told you so, because this bill right here that they all signed is a straight FU to the Xi Jinping government, and it's not what we want.
And as Pasta said, this isn't defending authoritarianism in China. That is obvious, but authoritarianism in our country is also extremely obvious. And it's also something that is obviously happening. And regardless of whether it exists there, it exists here. And we should focus on fixing our own country before meddling in another country's affairs. And then, of course, in turn, manipulating it so in the name of democracy and humanitarianism, which is, like Pasta said, what we constantly do time and time again. And what we've been doing for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the major superpowers in the world. This is a country that has nuclear weapons. This is some serious shit here, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't want to, you know what I'm saying? And we have some video, because what I did was we couldn't see the votes as far as on paper. It's not official down. It was a voice vote. Therefore, we don't know who voted what on what. But I went into C-SPAN, and here's my Twitter real quick, though. Let's show my Twitter real quick, because I want to point out, just want everybody to know, okay, right here, anybody who supports the Hong Kong Human Rights Democracy Act knows that they're backing the same regime change aficionado that talked to the opposition in Bolivia. That's right, Marco Rubio, bringing freedom and democracy from Uncle Sam. And there he is. If you can click on the picture, it was the same picture with Nancy Pelosi, Joshua Wong, okay? This guy has been the major agitator. And if you go back to that Twitter real quick, that report, that article from Ajit, I just want to show you down below on this article, when you go all the way down, Johnny, it's going to show you who the members of the board are. Keep going down even further. All who's on the board. Below that, right here. Now you go below this right over here. Hong Kong, the NED. It's all these people that are on their advisory board. All these people. So in other words, they're working hand in hand using U.S. taxpayer dollar. And it listed there. The advisory board, who's on the regular board, they call themselves the HKDC right now. The Hong Kong Deputy Council, whatever. And it's this group that is funded by the NED, is directed by the NED. It's all their advisory board telling them what to do. And they're trying to cause havoc and chaos within their own people and their own country. Therefore, we manufacture consent and we do what we need to do in an imperialistic way so the elites and the oligarchs get their cheddar, fam. And that's what this is about. That's why I'm so strong in saying, hey, wait a second. China's not doing so bad. Let's leave them be. They're bringing people out of poverty. They're trying to get people involved. You know what I'm saying? They're moving people out of extreme poverty. We need to get our own shit straight first before we start poking our eye in anywhere else. But that's what this is about. And it really is bad.
It's just important to note that Donald Trump and the Republicans are in agreement with the Democratic establishment.
Yes.
Once again, the Nancy Pelosi's, the Cory Booker's, the Kamala Harris's, all of these people.
Schultz.
Yeah. And all these people who call themselves progressives. When it comes to foreign policy, they all agree. They all have this agenda to be extremely pro-war, pro-regime change, pro-proxy war. If they do veer from that, they are a threat to the establishment, and that is obviously, you can see that at play during this election.
Yeah,
that's what you're seeing.
And they're calling these pro-democracies. I was so disgusted to see Ayanna Presley's name on that.
I'm not surprised.
So disgusted, young lady. Sorry.
She's been pro-Hillary and pro-Warren.
That's it. And she's pro-war. She's pro-war in my mind, because that's really bad. Now, here's the footage of some of the on the C-SPAN, on the Democratic floor. Excuse me, not the Democratic floor, on the congressional floor, when they had some debate time about it. Now, this is our guy. His name is Ted. I thought it was America. Yo-ho. This is the guy. This is the, ladies and gentlemen, listen to the language that this guy's using, and you tell me if this isn't a Cold War neoconservative mentality. This is the people pushing this and co-sponsoring all the bills. Go ahead.
By Representative McGovern, and I'm proud to say that I'm a co-sponsor of all three. Over the past 5 months, mass civilian protests in Hong Kong have begun to shed light on the deterioration of the Chinese Communist Party's influence outside of mainland China. Rising resentment in Hong Kong is not simply a result of the ill-fated extradition law championed by Chief Executive Carrie Lam, but the continued encroachment on freedom and liberties by President Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party. Despite the 1997 Sino-British Agreement, leaders in Beijing continued their high-intensity political pressure campaign to subdue dissent within Hong Kong, which has emboldened the people of Hong Kong to stand up against Beijing, but more for freedom. And this is illustrated by the people of Hong Kong raising and waving the American flag while burning the Chinese party's flag. The protesters now maintain 5 demands that Mr. Sherman already talked about: the withdrawal of the extradition bill, drop charges against the protesters, launch an investigation into the police forces, and universal suffrage, which would allow voters to directly pick their leaders instead of hand-picked leaders of their chief executive by Beijing. As a ranking member of the Subcommittee on Asia and the Pacific and Nonproliferation, I've been extremely outspoken against the continued deterioration of rights and freedoms in Hong Kong. The passage of these important pieces of legislation will send a strong message to President Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party that these abuses will not be tolerated by the international community.
I mean, it's like he's just reading from the same playbook written in 1980, man. It's the same thing. It's like, first of all, China hasn't got involved in this. Beijing hasn't even brought, you know what I'm saying? This is what this is about. The NED, the CIA light, funds all these agitators, these anti-Beijing people, and they're trying really hard to draw the Chinese government in, to bring in their police force, their guards, and they can say, look what they're doing. So Xi Jinping has got the same situation that Putin had in the Ukraine. He's getting baited, but he's not taking the bait. He's handled it really well. They retracted the law. They said, let's do away with the law. So there is really nothing going on. Secondly, they've been on their own system that has nothing to do with Beijing. It's an austerity, colonized, system. Okay, they have the highest rents in Hong Kong. The four highest people who own the most money are real estate investors, and there's got homeless that is growing like there's no tomorrow. All the problems that these people that they kind of tapped into were the problems with Hong Kong. They had nothing to do with Beijing, but yet our government uses these situations to try to manipulate the people into manufacturing to consent to doing these things right here, fam.
Right.
Before we get to Nancy Pelosi, don't you like Ted Yoho? This guy is from Gainesville.
Oh,
Ocala.
God.
Did you guys almost go to University of Florida?
Screw Ocala.
Listen,
I can't stand it over there.
I know
Sorry
but
to
this is the
anybody
guy.
who's
Did this guy ever go to China whatsoever? And if you go look, I went and looked. I didn't want to start pulling it up. There's defense contract money from Mr. Yoho. He's gotten his cash there too as well. Freedom Fund, the Freedom Fund. That one. Mr. Yoho gets the money there. All you have to do is look at all these guys, and this guy Sherman over here, who's one of the supporters of these bills.
Brad?
Right over here in friggin' Woodland Hills in Studio City,
That's
fam.
right.
Mr. Sherman. I think who
Mr.
ran
Brad.
against him? Pelzer?
No.
Did Pelzer did run against
Was
him last
it?
time?
I think so, yes.
I think it was Pelzer
Yeah.
who ran against him last time. But this guy, once again, he's right around the corner. Another freaking... These guys are not for peace. But listen, no party would be complete without Grandma Pelosi coming saying her... Let's get Grandma Pelosi on. Here
Auntie
she is.
Pelosi.
Pelosi.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized.
Watch the way she walks. Just waddles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I thank him for his support of democracy and democratic freedom in Hong Kong. I want to salute my colleague, Representative Smith from New Jersey, with whom I have worked for decades on this subject, whether it's religious freedom, freedom of expression, and in China. And I thank Mr. McGovern for his important leadership as chair of the China Commission and as chair of the Lantos Human Rights Commission. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Sherman, for your leadership and for yielding, in fact. So right now we're on the Protect Hong Kong Act as amended by Mr. McGovern, and I rise in support of that legislation and indeed the bills that are on the floor to support democratic freedom in Hong Kong. Mr. Speaker, for 4 months, the young people of Hong Kong have sent a stirring message to the world that the dreams of freedom, justice, and democracy can never be extinguished by injustice and intimidation. The extraordinary outpouring of courage from the people of Hong Kong stands in stark contrast to a cowardly government that refuses to respect the rule of law or live up to the one country, two systems framework, which was guaranteed more than 2 decades ago. In 1984, before the United Kingdom transferred Hong Kong to China, the Chinese government promised a high degree of autonomy for the territory in the Joint Declaration of the Question of Hong Kong, providing for an independent executive, legislature, and judiciary. Independent, ensuring the freedom of speech, press, assembly, and religion, prohibiting the central government, the Chinese government in Beijing, from interfering in the affairs that Hong Kong administers on its own according to the basic law, and pledging a path to universal suffrage. In 1997, that's when we were here doing this, when the handover occurred, America was hopeful that the people of Hong Kong would achieve this high degree of autonomy that they were promised. And this was a promise that was participated in by the UK government. Today, we must sadly conclude that China has broken that promise. For years, the people of Hong Kong have faced a barrage of unjust and harsh restrictions on their freedoms, and those who have stood up for their rights have been met with a cruel crackdown. In Congress, Democrats and Republicans in the House and in the Senate stand united with the people of Hong Kong. If America does not speak out for human rights in China because of commercial interest, then we lose all moral authority to speak out for human rights any place in the world.
Fam, I'm going to let you go
Okay.
first with Grandma Pelosi because everything she said, she's lying right there. You know, she's manufacturing consent. Once again, this is a superpower, and she's standing off against them when she even admits that it was a handoff in 97, but yet she won't let them govern their own country. And they are not getting involved. They are not doing anything to Hong Kong. Fam, I'm sorry. It was Grandma Pelosi going crazy over there. Like, none of this shit is seen. And this is the leader of this country, right? This is the leader of your Democrats, ladies and gentlemen. She's stuck in 1997 when we were there. What are we talking about again? She says first thing when she comes up.
I love how Pasta says, I'm going to let you go first, and then proceeds to do a
Sorry,
monologue.
because this shit is firing me up, man. You know how I'm pissed off I am about China.
I know. So, she has the audacity to talk about this isn't about our commercial interests. This is about democracy. And I'm just like, what the hell? Like, this is exactly about our commercial interests, about our American imperial interests. Otherwise, we wouldn't be meddling, period. And we wouldn't be trying to vilify and create this sort of fault from China into Hong Kong. Like, we wouldn't be trying to fabricate this nonsense if we really truly cared about democracy. We also would, if we truly cared about democracy, we would be caring about Palestinians, caring about the people in Yemen, caring about the people in Flint, caring about people here who are dying without health care, caring about our own unfair and rigged elections. That's what we would be doing if we cared about democracy. But we don't care about democracy. We only care about our special interests, about our money-eyed interests, and that's it. And that's why we're doing what we're doing in Hong Kong. That's why Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump, at the end of the day, stand in agreement with their foreign policy, because all they care about is making money. That's why you're seeing all these Democrats, all these billionaires, all these corporatists run against Bernie Sanders and not run against Donald Trump. Because they would rather have Donald Trump, because at least Donald Trump is going to continue the status quo type of foreign policy that ultimately affects everything else. The reason they don't want you to pay attention to this stuff, the reason they don't even talk about it, the reason they make it so you think that you're doing a great job by supporting legislation like this is because the moment people start paying attention to foreign policy and to foreign diplomacy, that's the moment they're going to realize, holy crap, this is where all of our energy and all of our money is going, and this is what's fomenting the hatred against our country. This is what's creating terrorism. This is what's creating the cartels. This is what is creating all of this stuff that we can't focus on our own domestic issues because of this. And the moment people realize that, that's when things are actually going to change. But they don't want you to realize that. They want you to think that, it's all great and dandy. They'll tell you whatever they want you to hear when it comes to domestic policy, just so they don't have to explain to you that whatever they're enacting there is actually detrimental. People like Brad Sherman aren't necessarily terrible with domestic policy here in the state of California, but you look at his votes when it comes to foreign policy, and that guy's as pro-war as it comes.
Yeah.
So that is very important. We must start paying attention to votes like that, to legislation like that, to foreign policy. And I get that a lot of us are too busy trying to pay rent, too busy trying to work jobs that aren't paying enough, too busy in debt, etc. But at the end of the day, that foreign policy is why we're in this situation in the first place, too.
Yeah, it's where a lot of money is going, and let's agree. Let's just call it what it is. The Democrats and Donald Trump, they agree on Venezuela. The Democrats and the majority of Democrats and Donald Trump agree on Bolivia. The majority of Democrats and Donald Trump, they agree on Hong Kong. All these areas, where do they agree on?
Ecuador,
they agree, right? Same field over there and stuff like that, and that's where all our money is being wasted. It's our pure imperialistic roots, which is the most racial thing we can do. You know what I'm saying? The biggest racial injustice we can do is continue on with our imperialistic ways. We're talking about indigenous people in Bolivia getting shot down in the streets, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
And
Where's the
nobody has to pay a
pro-democracy
price.
there?
Yeah.
Where's the pro-democracy? It's not there. And Nancy Pelosi's over there, leading impeachment against Donald Trump. But what is she doing impeaching Donald Trump when she agrees with Donald Trump on a lot of his legislation and his foreign policy? Like, I don't understand. Why don't you impeach Trump on trying to help a coup in Venezuela against against a democratically elected leader?
Yeah.
Why is Nancy Pelosi not impeaching him on that, but instead impeaching him on BS?
Yeah.
That is going to get us nowhere.
They can go after him. A lot of people say go after Donald Trump for bombing Syria. Using the AUMF, whatever, but there's a line where he violated the law. Why not go after? Oh, you can't do that. You know why? Because the Democrats think that Assad is a crazy, brutal dictator now, and we can't go after him on that because we also agree with him on that as well. Super chat contribution from Manny. Bernie needs to fire Matt Duss. Appreciate you guys. What do you think about that, fam? Matt Duss, should he go?
I don't agree with the majority of the takes he has had. I do agree with the Bolivia take. I didn't think it went far enough, but I do agree that he could do much, much better than Matt does.
And Naz Calito, thank you for the Super Chat contribution, as it is always appreciated on the couch. And for Cyber Monday, you get an extra one. Thank you for the Super Chat contribution, as it is always appreciated on the couch. And he says, nice to see you too. Well, Restream hit us up to double charge us for 2 YouTubes now. They just changed their policy, and it caught us off guard. So the last week we weren't streaming on the MCSC network because of it. We waited for Cyber Monday, and we got a little deal, fam. So now we are back streaming on the MCSC network. Big ups and big loves to our friend Nico House and Sophia the Russian bot. Really quick right over here, fam. Nicaragua is on the regime change radar, fam. The Gray Zone reported again, whatnot. And we said this before. We've been keeping our eye. The guy we had on last week, Kevin Zeist, and one of the first things I heard him say was talk about Nicaragua. He was like the go-to guy. He connected the NED, the money funding. Once again, your taxpayer dollar. You Trump guys who want to build a wall, guess what? You don't have to build a wall. Just stop funding these coups, and they'll stop coming here in droves like crazy. You think the people of Bolivia, you think the people of Venezuela, you think the people of Nicaragua want to leave their beautiful homeland? No, they don't. But they have no choice. Why? Because the United States government supports brutal dictators that go on killing rampages so they can steal the natural resources and not give it to the people. Don't eat bananas from Honduras. It says Operation Condor 2.0. After the Bolivia coup, Trump dubs Nicaragua as a national security threat and targets Mexico. And fam, I have to watch it. You did a really good video, I heard, because it's got a lot of views about the cartels now. What is Donald Trump saying with the cartels?
So Donald Trump wants to label all of the cartels as terrorists. This is problematic because once you can label somebody as a terrorist, now anybody associated with the terrorist is in trouble. You have to completely disassociate from them. Those people are in danger of deportation. And then you have to also notify the Treasury Department of if you are receiving or doing any sort of monetary exchange. Now, the problem with that is if Trump can label anybody as a terrorist because of this administration's anti-immigrant plan when it comes to people coming into this country, it's made the situation far worse than it was. Obama, of course, deported many millions of people, started the cages, and that is to be noted. However, Donald Trump is making the situation much, much worse. And by calling cartels, all cartels terrorists, you're completely ignoring the fact that, number one, we have our own terrorists to deal with at home. We have, number two, are the number one people that are at fault for what's going on with the quote-unquote war on drugs. It's a facade used to create profit for Americans.
Yep.
A lot of the police have been involved. I have known police officers that have talked about to me personally how they have worked with people who have supplied weapons to these cartels, supplied drugs to these cartels, engaged in businesses because of money, because who's buying all these drugs? Americans are. And this isn't something that is made up. This is something you can look up. The United States is primarily to blame for what's going on with the cartels, for the war on drugs. A lot of the gangs and the MS-13s that people on the right love to talk about, those gangs were fueled by our coups. When Hillary Clinton, under the Obama administration, went in 2009 into Honduras, she created a country that is now it has so much civil unrest that these gangs are now the only way to survive and for these people to kind of be in there. And now people are being killed by these gangs. And this is all a result of, once again, our foreign policy, our pro-regime change, our desire to go and meddle into other countries, especially Latin America.
Yeah.
Latin America is something we've been after for a long, long time. And we continue to meddle in Latin America. And now Tulsi saw the writing on the wall. That was the whole point I wanted to make in that video, was that Tulsi Gabbard, and I think Tulsi knew, and I think Pete Buttigieg knew, that something was happening, because he was for bringing the military to stand up against the cartels, which can translate to some sort of fighting between our military and Mexico. And of course, then Mexico's government's going to get involved. And then it's going to be this whole thing. And now who do we have in Mexico? We have AMLO, who's a leftist socialist president that is housing Evo Morales. Like, that's not convenient for us. What a coincidence that all of a sudden now we're like, oh yeah, we need to send our military. Oh yeah, now we need to label them as terrorists. Oh yeah, like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I got chills when you talked about Manuel Zelaya, because we've been talking about this for a long time. This is one of our key issues and stuff. We talked about Latin America. We talked about regime change. We talked about the Monroe Doctrine. How in the friggin' world is Nicaragua a security threat to the United States, fam? How? And can anybody give me a logical? Can you think of Johnny Sue? Can you think of something just make something up for me, because I can't even make something up on how Nicaragua could be a security threat to the United States. Help me out.
Socialism, communism.
Can we get a dolphin? Do you have a dolphin standing by, please? Thank you very much. I think it's just ridiculous.
No, but I think that's true in a way. I mean, they don't
I mean, that's what it really is, right?
That's really what it is. Yeah, but it's the same thing with Bolivia. The same thing. Latin America would be a very powerful, like South America, even and Central America would be very powerful if they had socialist leftist governments, more like Bolivia's Evo Morales, more like Maduro's, more like all of those people that have come together. Like Lula, if he wasn't ousted. But we continue involving ourselves and getting rid of these people, because the last thing we need is a powerful, independent Latin America with Venezuela's oil, with their own resources that are no longer dependent on U.S. capitalism and us maintaining control over our empire. And our empire is falling, and understandably and justly so, because you know what, it's time.
Expensive.
It's ridiculous. I mean, we just need to stop.
And really a lot of it is about the military industrial complex just making money hand over fist. All the guns in Mexico that are being used, 95% of coming from the United States.
We supply the weapons.
A lot of them are from the gun club loophole. When we talk about in the gun club, the gun show loophole, you can go into a gun show and you don't have a waiting period. You can buy a rifle right there. So you can go in there and buy a military grade weapon without even getting checked. So if the cartel meets me outside, like, hey man, you want to make 10 grand? What? Just go in there and buy us 20 weapons with the money we give you. You come out, we'll give you 10 grand. People need to feed their families. Once again, they're starving. So that's what happens. They go into these gun shows, they bring them out, and the cartel's waiting there. They buy them. They smuggle them across the border.
Exactly.
Now the military-industrial complex, the gun manufacturers are making money hand over fist while people are killing themselves. And then it's also about resource extraction. Nicaragua has resources we want. Mm-hmm. We want that oil. We want their natural resources. And then the third part is defamation of socialism. They won't want American citizens seeing that parts of socialism are successful. We have them in this country. Social Security, our roads, our police department, our libraries. But if you even kick it a notch further, and you can see a bunch of happy people who are getting health care, who are getting free education from a socialist system, even with capitalism, it could be a quasi-system like these countries have. American people will go, wait a second, I want that. So American imperialism and the elites are to destroy it on every level. And right now, for them to even say that Nicaragua is a security threat is a joke, but we had it on the radar. We've been talking about Manuel Zelaya. I think we have a little face thing with Manuel Zelaya, fam. And sure enough, if you're paying attention, you can see this shit coming.
Exactly.
What I didn't see coming, well, I think we did see coming, was Joe freaking Biden done lost his mind. Joe Biden, my ladies and gentlemen. We're on the Joe Biden segment of the thing here. Joe Biden. Fam, we're going to get a little shameless plug over here. Here's the first video of Joe Biden. You got to play this one. This has 7.7 million views. I didn't listen to it at first because I was like, all right, I am so over Joe Biden's crazy things.
I know.
But when I listened to this, Johnny's like, you didn't listen to this yesterday? And I couldn't stop laughing. I was on the floor. I got hairy legs. John, play this thing. This is just, I'm pretty sure
Spiders.
This is hysterical. This is vintage.
By the way,
Joe
wait. Before he plays it, I just want to say this is from 2017. This is from like the corn pop thing. Like this is again old. So they're bringing it out, yeah, which is an important point to make, but it's bad. So just let it play.
And by the way, I sit on the stand, and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
Okay.
And I tell you what. And by the way, I sit on the...
What was with the kid? And by the way, I like kids sitting on my lap.
I just feel
It's
whoever
like
claps.
He just goes double creepy. He
Yeah.
like trumps the creepiness.
I mean, if you think Donald Trump is creepy, I mean, you have to give Joe Biden some credit. Look,
I sit on the stand.
I'm not
I
for
got hairy legs. Sorry.
I'm not for making fun of Joe Biden because it's fun. Like for me, it's lost. It's it's like okay, like he. I don't even go after Joe Biden because he goes after himself. Every other day, there's something he says or does that just makes him look like a freaking lunatic. So we don't really have to go on Joe Biden. I don't see him as Bernie's biggest threat. I see Warren as Bernie's biggest threat, period. And Buttigieg as a second. Joe Biden, I feel like he is, becoming more senile, genuinely. I'm not saying that to make fun of him. I do feel like he doesn't get it. He's so out of touch. He says things without thinking, like kind of like Donald Trump. And I do think like he doesn't understand like the connections that these words have in the context of today's world where you can't just say stuff like that and people are going to be really creeped out by it. And like, it doesn't make any sense. And then it gets worse, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, James Elias, our buddy, he says, can you believe that this is like the most normal thing that Joe Biden has done over the weekend? That's why I kind of looked at this stuff. I believe that you made a, let's see, I got your Facebook first, where we have a little meme, right? This is a great meme right over here. There's plugless shame over here. There's
Shameless
oligarchy,
plug.
shameless plug right here, and the Democratic Party. Okay, now.
So this is about
What is he doing?
So
What is he doing?
he
Is it just like anything near his hand?
he thought that was finger food. So this is when his wife, I think her name is Jill, right? Jill Biden, was talking and giving a speech because he can't even talk. Like him talking and giving speeches doesn't usually work well. So she's the one doing most of the talking. And so she puts her hand near his. It's not, people thought, oh, maybe, she accidentally, like, no. If there's a video, and if you watch the video, she puts her hand out here, and he nears his mouth to it. Because it's so close to him, he just goes, and, like, bites it. And it's just, it's just so strange. I don't know what to make of it other than just, like, it's just really strange.
Oh,
Man.
I got one too like that. I said, I think you're being too harsh, okay? I got inside info that Joe's wife had a little Nutella left on her fingers, and he was politely licking it off, fam. I mean, not for nothing. You have a little Nutella on your fingers, I might go after it too and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. The memes are going crazy. Enough is enough. I don't think anybody is really... I mean, are we really serious about Joe Biden? He has zero shot, ladies and gentlemen. Zero shot. It is time for him to drop out. And I think it's time for Kamala Harris to drop out. I think she's already on the verge. That letter, I don't know if we talked about it. We talked about it briefly, but it was harsh. It was very, very damaging. And it speaks volumes of what we've been saying for a long time.
Right.
Where Kamala Harris is just a shitty person. You know what I'm saying? And, she doesn't belong in this race. She never did. It's just the Democratic establishment propping her up, and it's time for her to be propped away.
And right now, Donut Twitter is trying to make "She's My President" hashtag "She's My President" happened on Twitter because of, all the backlash against Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton. So there's this trending hashtag that's "She's My President." However, it hasn't gotten a lot of play. And instead of putting "She's My President" for Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton or Elizabeth Warren, people are putting "She's My President" for Tulsi or Nina Turner or Bernie Sanders if he gets gender reassignment is what people are saying, because the majority of people would rather have any one of those over a Hillary Clinton or a Kamala Harris. So.
I do have a super chat contribution. Let me say hi to a couple people though first. On the Facebook,
okay, fam?
Scott Dakota's there. Oh, we already said that. Steve Wilbrandt, Armin Magunian, David Crow is in the house. Tom Toth, how you doing, brother? Glad you're watching today. Pijmon, Meg Lee, Chad Wilson, Danny Garcia, how you doing, buddy?
What's up, Danny?
Michael Rayburn, Lana Bell. Thank you so much, everybody. Gilbert Flores watching on the Facebooks. We have a super chat contribution on the Convo Couch YouTube, and if you haven't signed up for the Convo Couch YouTube, please subscribe, hit the bell, and go over to our Rockfin as well. ROKFIN. We got another debate coming up, and you want to be able to watch it. J Money J, thank you very much for the super chat contribution, as it is always appreciated on the couch. And since it's Cyber Monday, it's a double always appreciated on the couch. Hey everyone, in your opinion,
you guys want pasta to die?
Okay, we'll get to that. Who do you think is most likely to win or go up against Trump in 2020? Is there some kind of bias to hold back candidates like Tulsi Gabbard and Sanders in terms of coverage?
Absolutely. Not only Sanders and Gabbard, but also Yang. They're also silencing him, and I don't agree with the majority of his policies, but I still think it's wrong to keep him out of the debate. Same with Tulsi. We saw that the Boston Globe had a poll. And the DNC is excluding that poll, even though they counted it before, simply because Tulsi is polling at 6%, and that would make her qualify for the debate. She's already qualified for the over 200,000 threshold of donors, so she's getting the donors she needs. But they are trying to silence her and Andrew Yang, and of course Bernie Sanders as usual. The Bernie blackout is very known, and the idea that the fact that Bloomberg is running against Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is like the #1 critic of Bloomberg, Washington Post, all of these people.
His name's Blombito. We did talk about it. If you have, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever want to see Mr. Blombito speak Spanish, it's the worst in the world.
I thought pasta Spanish was bad, but
no, Blumbitos is
worse.
So awesome. That's what they're calling him. I can't get to that other super chat contribution. Can you get to it? Because I can't.
Maybe it's gone.
It's gone for me. I missed it.
Oh.
Who is it?
It's Lori Mountain Gal Pow.
Oh, Mountain Gal Pow!
She said MLK pointed out the connection between our antagonism overseas and troubles of inequality, racism, and violence here at home.
Absolutely.
And it's funny you bring that up.
I was just,
It's that is so freaking true. These guys are diving into the JFK book. By the way, I'm the #1 ranked chess player in the house.
No, you're not.
Yes, that is true. I
No,
beat him
you're
already.
not. I'm beating him.
We're playing right
You
now.
guys,
She's
I
about
am
to be
beating
toast.
him.
So in chess right now.
Let Johnny talk.
Okay.
Anyways, we're reading this JFK book that we saw Tulsi reading. And there's a lot of revelations in there, maybe some that our viewers don't even know now.
So I think we should do a show on that one once we read a little bit more of it. But just for starters, MLK, JFK, Robert Kennedy, and Malcolm X. And I've known, but this book goes in detail that there were actual covert CIA-driven plots to murder all of these people. And the one thing that they did have in common was not only that they stood up against the establishment economic-wise, they stood up more than anything against the military-industrial complex and the intelligence agencies. And those are the people that once you stand up to them, you put a target on your back. This is why I feel like Tulsi Gabbard is a hardcore badass for going after them fearlessly, because I honestly don't think she's scared. And I think it's necessary for somebody to do that, but I also genuinely believe these people, these powers and Bernie has talked about it too, these people that he's going after, the powers that be, they're very, very, very powerful, dark, forces, and he's talked about them. And so in very similar ways, so did JFK.
Well,
And so did others. And then, of course, one other thing that they had in common, people like Malcolm X and MLK, was they started talking about the bridging of class warfare, class revolution with, to translate that, economic policies, economic revolution with racial injustice, how it's all connected and how those are two arms of the oligarchy, and how we need to understand that they pit us against one another in order to control everything. They use race, they use gender, they use everything to make sure that we're against each other. Not dismissing, of course, that those injustices exist between gender and between races. However, they weaponize those to further our focus away from the economic struggles, and so we in turn turn against one another. And, they use the same thing against poor white people to turn them against the poor black people, and the poor white people to turn them against the immigrants coming in here. And it still goes at play today. So,
and it's like Martin Luther King Jr., he started to realize this stuff. A lot of people started talking about the Bacon Revolution and whatnot, where white people, black people, Asian people, everybody got together and realized, oh, who's our common enemy? Who's really keeping us down? And go after them. And as soon as he started noticing that, they killed his ass. Same thing with X. Once again, in the beginning of their careers, if you listen to them talk and whatnot, and you see it now, before they were killed, a lot different. It was a lot more like, wait a second here. If we can come together, these oligarchs who are keeping us down and doing that, we can really turn the tide. Like you said, these problems are going to exist. But I think that a lot of those problems are exasperated. So we are pitted against each other, and they can steal all the resources and run off with all the money. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., they understood foreign policy. Muhammad Ali spoke out against the Vietnam War, what we were doing over there. It was really, really big. A lot of people don't talk about that to this day, but it's very, very important. So that's the part of what's going on that I like to promote and say, hey, man, I know this stuff exists. I know we have to deal with it, but we have to deal with the bigger issue at hand. And the fact is that we are pitted against each other, and these elites, they now own, 400 people own 80% of the resources in this world, ladies and gentlemen?
Yeah.
The game has not been played. We have to get on board.
3 people own the majority of wealth in this country.
Ridiculous.
Have more wealth in the bottom half of this country. Bernie Sanders constantly cements that. And one more thing before we move on is I want to point out that right before JFK was killed, he was actually there was a whole regime change situation going on in Laos, and he was actually standing for the Laos government, saying that we need to leave them be and stop involving ourselves. They were trying to do a pro-democracy regime change in Laos because Laos was under a communist regime, and the United States and his advisors were like, you need to go in there and we need to make sure we take care of our interests and spread democracy, the same bullshit sort of language. And he stood his ground and said no against his advisement.
Yes.
And then he was, shortly after that, he was murdered.
He also wanted to disband the CIA at the same time. He was on the right side when it came to those
Expand?
Expel, excuse me. He wanted to destroy the CIA, get rid of it. Lincoln wanted to, I think, destroy the banking industry, get more of a centralized bank. These people were shot in the face because of it. But the one thing that Tulsi has that they don't have is Tulsi was in the service. Okay?
Right.
So maybe Tulsi has met some connections to help her live and stay around. Who knows? I don't know. But that is one thing that Tulsi has that a lot of other people, those other people do not have.
Yes, you're right. She has the military experience.
Maybe she's got friends. Because I got friends.
So, fams, there was a super chat. Cam Shwari Kate.
Yeah, I was just about to read it.
From
you got
Canada.
It,
is Thomas Merton mentioned in that same book?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That speaks of MLK, JFK.
He was an activist and like a hardcore leftist of his time, and the writer Douglas speaks very, very fondly of him. And this is called JFK's The Unspeakable.
Yeah.
Show the picture of Tulsi.
It's a really great book.
Yeah, I'll show it again.
Oh, you had it up there? But that was the thing you said.
That's the book she's carrying.
JFK.
That's what we're reading.
I saw it and I was like, what book is she carrying?
I recommend everybody read this book. It is very shocking, even if you have suspected long that, this is the truth. And it's not a conspiracy theory. It's really not. And Alan Dulles was highly, highly involved in JFK's murder. So, Anyway.
And the thing is that I always rag. I've been ragging on since you guys been watching this for a while. I've been kind of really, through investigative journalism and reading things and talking to people, have really kind of been standoffish when it comes to Hollywood and the movies and the art that's being made. But a friend of mine mentioned the other day, said, don't forget, we're still the art makers that are in there trying to survive and trying to make things happen. I think we should have a JFK movie night and
I
watch
was told that movie was inaccurate last night, that it was really bad.
It had its inaccuracies, but it did explain the players involved. You can still get a lot from it. And it does talk about the one person who did kind of try to take the deep state and people to accountability when it came to the death of John F. Kennedy, and that's something that we can't ignore because he was, I forgot his name, he was the one lawyer that really did give a shot to try to go out there and expose some stuff. So, okay. So, Johnny's got some breaking news because we talk about sanctions. Here it goes.
Breaking news. China announces sanctions against U.S.-based nonprofit groups in response to Congress's Hong Kong legislation.
Congratulations!
Yes!
We're now amping up war.
China said Monday that it would sanction U.S.-based nonprofit organizations, including the National Endowment for Democracy and Human Rights Watch, in retaliation for new U.S. legislation that supports Hong Kong's protesters.
And I support what China's doing. I support them imposing.
Wow.
What else are they going to do?
No, they should do this. Why are they exposing the NED?
Right, they're exposing the NED and the NGOs. Why are we're literally trying to promote them as pro-democracy. And I'm not for sanctions, but we never get sanctioned.
Yeah,
it's
good. They should do this shit.
Hey, this is how it feels. And unfortunately, now they're going to use this. The United States is going to use this as retaliation to do whatever
amp
the
up
next
war.
Amp up more.
Manufacture.
And another thing that to bring back the JFK thing, and this goes along with it. We have been trying to. We were on the brink of war when JFK was president, and he against the advisement of everybody else, tried to stop the Cold War. He would have gone further if he hadn't been so badly surrounded by all these neocons.
Yeah.
When it comes to Cuba, he was actually planning to meet with Castro and talk to him. He spoke favorably of Castro, of course, but we turned it around and of course we stopped it and we made it impossible for that to happen. And so now when you look at people like Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard who speak of peace and etc., and specifically Tulsi talking with our adversaries and sitting down and having conversations, that is what JFK was trying to do, and they killed him before he did that. So just to know what is at stake here, we are on the brink of a Cold War. Once again, the reemergence of a Cold War that never really died. That's always been kind of there. And Tulsi Gabbard understands this, and she's one of the only people that understands how dangerous it is that we are always on the brink of nuclear war and how we must stop it, and how our hatred for Russia and China is only making the situation far worse.
Yeah, and standing behind these imperialistic groups like the NED, another one, this very group right here, ladies and gentlemen, for the help you gave us, we went into the California KDM convention in Long Beach, and we got a bunch of candidates, including one Cory Booker, who always talks about racial issues in neighborhoods like mine, standing behind the OAS, which is an extremist imperialistic group that leads to the death and killing of indigenous people in Bolivia. And he's going to stand there and say he stands for racial justice? Fuck out of here.
Fuck out of here.
Done. And look at what's going on. You know, this is it, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. Everything I've been speaking up against, and this is why I've been talking about this. It's not like I think that people like Narendra Modi, people like Xi Jinping are the way, are the shining beacon of light of an example of a government. But no, they do enough within their own government to leave them be. The United Nations ain't after these people.
We're not the police of the world.
We're not. And in that speech that Grandma Pelosi gave, she even talked more about the Uyghurs, and she talked about Tibet. We're talking about in the 50s. China hasn't got involved in any type of military intervention in over 30 years. And the one time was a small thing during communist Vietnam and communist China in the late 80s.
Right.
And that was a small thing. And that is not the Xi Jinping government. Totally different now. Taking people out of poverty. Just leave them be. Let them do their own thing. They're not invading any country. Leave them be.
I've come to the conclusion that the oligarchs don't care about starting nuclear war because they don't care about losing millions of people. In fact, I feel like they want that. They see population as sort of getting out of control. They see the resources are scarce. They see all of these things, and they really don't care about killing millions of people. That's why they don't care about starting war. It's not them who are going to be dying.
Nope.
It's going to be the poorest people, the most defenseless people. Those are the people that are going to be dying, and those are the people that they could care less about.
Yeah. Deep State said a lot of great things on this chat. Deep State also said the drug war funds the Deep State, and he said right here, term limits. Yeah. Why do we have to? Why is Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, why are they allowed to stay in power for so long? Chuckles Schumer, they need to go.
It would be fine without term limits if our elections were fair, right? They would have been voted out a long time ago, but our elections aren't fair.
I don't know about that.
I think
the
they
sensationalism with all these people still standing. We see these people, fam. They're out there cheering for Dianne Feinstein and Nancy Pelosi.
It's not. I think it's because of the way the system is, though. Too. Like I think it's who the system is only inviting certain people to vote, and it's only counting the way the electorate is set up. I think it should be one vote, one voice.
The media helps too as well.
Exactly.
The media just sits there, puts forth their candidates. Now, the other people don't. Have you seen Shahid Buttar on MSNBC yet? Have you seen Shahid Buttar on CNN? Have you seen Shahid Buttar? You probably see him on Fox first. They'll get a hold of it. So Nancy Pelosi's. You know what I'm saying? Once they sort out all the other people in there, and I apologize to those who support somebody other than Shahid running against Nancy. Obviously, to me, he's been the most impressive. There are a lot of things I like about him, a few things I don't. But you don't see him out there getting the time. Tim Canova was on Jimmy Dore today, right? Or he was on another day, and they put the video up today. Tim Canova never got on MSNBC and CNN. Right. He only got on Fox when he was running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
How dare he get on Fox? Well, because they would have
fucking
put him anywhere else. Yeah, exactly. So
thank you for watching this show, then.
Yeah.
We're raging against the media, right? Johnny, so you got anything else before we get on out of here? All right, ladies and gentlemen. I got a call from Mark Sloboda. He wants to come back on tomorrow night. If we can do that, we'll check it out. We'll talk amongst ourselves, see if we could fit him in. But we love our foreign policy junkie, Sloboda. We had Kevin Zeese on, who kind of said that the first time he was on the show, he didn't even know that Fiorella had a partner because Fiorella never said anything.
I did not say
But we
anything.
did cut up a lot of videos. We got a lot of stuff out there. Kevin Zeese we talked a little bit about Hong Kong. We talked about the impeachment process, fam, because once again, he sent me a text yesterday. He said, what did I tell you? If the Senate gets a hold of this impeachment process, which in my personal opinion is, they'll try to say they have another witness. They'll try to stall out the clock. If they can get to the primaries without letting this impeachment process go to the Senate floor, because they even said if it goes to the Senate floor, Nancy Pelosi, take the stand. Joe Biden, take the stand. Adam Schiff, take the stand. John Kerry, take the stand. And they will be obliterated. That's all I have.
Drops mic. Bye, fam.
For Pasta Jardula
and Fiorella.
Johnny Sue is still spitting on those ones and twos. Like, share, subscribe. Our Rockfin, help us out over there. It's a cryptocurrency.
I'm going to be
platform.
posting one more video today.
Yes.
And you guys should check that out too.
And I'm going to watch that video about the cartels.
You should,
Fiorella was ahead of this. So was Donald Trump. So was Tulsi Gabbard. When we talked about this, okay, you're going to just send our troops in there? It's a serious thing.
She knew. She knew Pete Buttigieg is.
And he said it. Give us a combo out, fam.
Yeah, combo out, fam.
Peace.
Bye.